Benvenuti alla conferenza stampa del nostro film d'apertura, White Noise. E prima di cominciare vi presento a partire dal tavolo a destra gli ospiti, cioè dalla destra del tavolo gli ospiti, il produttore David Heyman, la co-protagonista Greta Gerwig, il regista e sceneggiatore del film Noah Baumbach, il coprotagonista Adam Driver, il coprotagonista Don Cheadle e la coprotagonista Jodie Turner-Smith.
It felt familiar, I would say. Yeah, when I was rereading it, which happened to by chance coincide with the pandemic happening, I both couldn't believe how relevant it felt and how it felt so much about the moment, but I also was struck by how I feel like whatever moment was going on, it would feel relevant to that. And at the same time, I started sort of feeling not only taking on his language, but finding my own voice within his language. It was something that felt very, that thing, familiar, I think is the right word. Absolutely. Well, I saw the family. There's that great line that Murray, Don's character, says that family is the cradle of the world's misinformation, and I think we see that on a in our families all the time. Just the things that are said, the way we even talk about our own family histories, we start to embellish. Truths change. And then I thought, well, what a wonderful sort of representative and representation of not only the country, America, but, sort of the world at large and how we take in information. And so you have the kids who are constantly going, and with maybe it's true, maybe it's not, they don't even know. And I thought it's wonderfully, I found it very funny, and also to what Julie was saying, familiar to me, because I've often played with language and how language shifts within conversation. But I also think it's very much true of the moment, and many moments. You're talking about television and radio then. Now, of course, we have the internet. But I think the movie is sort of very much about how we create these rituals and these strategies to try to hold off danger, death. And sometimes death comes, as it does in part 2, it comes for us. And in a way, we don't even know how to react. We look to TV, we look to the other people in the other cars. How do we even know if this is real danger or not? Because we're so used to seeing it on television. And part 3 is, okay, we're back to all of our strategies, our rituals, we're back shopping in the supermarket, but we've seen something new, and what do we do with that information? And I found the message in the novel, and the message that I sort of set out in the movie is it's an opportunity to become closer. The family starts to look more inward, and then they start to come closer.
I think it's sort of similar to what Noah is saying. When he started rereading the book, I started rereading the book, and the book has this quality to it where there's something about the language and how on fire Don DeLillo seemed to be when he was writing it, that it makes you, while you're reading it, look up and say, listen to this, and then, want to read sections out loud. So it already, to me, just inherently seemed to have this performative quality to it. Like there was something that you wanted to share it with other people, because it seemed to be, both emotional and intellectually exciting. And then in terms of the characters, who they became, we were lucky enough to have a long stretch of rehearsal before we started shooting. And I think that's when they became real people, because I think in the world of the novel, they felt more abstracted in a way. And then once you're embodying it and sort of in the rhythms of the dialogue and getting, to act with someone like Adam, they just stopped being ideas, and that's when I guess they felt more like characters in a Baumbach movie. But they feel very intertwined. They feel close. They don't feel like separate things. And I think even from reading it, they just felt connected.
Yeah, I would say the same. Not to just take your answer, but I didn't really define it as one or the other. They're both similar, and obviously they're well written and they're very specific. And there was a lot of material in the book that was curated by Noah, and we rehearsed it how we usually work on when we work on movies together. It feels very theatrical, not in the way it's performed, although this one, I would say there's moments of obviously big theatricality, but as Greta is saying, we have a lot of rehearsal, we're sitting around a table, we know the lines, it's very much the same process of a play just condensed into one day. You have the entire run of a play, a 4-month run, condensed in a lot of takes on the day that you're doing it. So it felt like theater, and obviously the things that Noah picked out of it that I wouldn't have picked out of it or you wouldn't have picked out of it is what makes it, feel like him. But obviously the style is different. It has a tone that is, there's a style to the movie that's new. So I wouldn't define it by any of them. It's Noah's perspective on the book, and then Greta and Don and I and Jodie and all the actors made our perspective on that, and then people watch it and have their perspective on our perspectives and Noah's perspective of Don DeLillo's book.
Well, the Bible is obviously the script and the book and Noah's vision, and our approach was dictated by all of those things. And I think that Murray is someone who, as we talked about him and as Noah and I ideated around who he was, he sort of is in it but not of it. He's kind of above it, but he's also inside of it. And he sort of, for me, existed on some sort of like elliptical plane around this stuff. He's like sort of the chorus at some point. So he's emotionally attached, but somehow he can also be detached whenever he decides to be. So it was I think we found a lot of interesting things about him. I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited to see it because we tried to put a lot of things in there that aren't necessarily Easter eggs, but, his little picadillos are very curious as far as how they refer to what's happening. So he, at some point, feels like he's absolutely affected by it, but also likes to stand outside of it as a philosopher and just look at it in a very objective way, and isn't somehow, bandied about by the same kind of fear that everybody else is. He's like, yeah, this is how it works when you're in these situations.
Yeah, we talked about the look and that I don't have a receding hairline, so we thought we'd add that, so we did. We had this guy, Scott Wheeler, who came in and did an amazing job, and Alexis Continente did the wig, and I put on weight, and as a backup, we had a backup stomach, and then we didn't need the backup stomach, then it was just my weight, and that was uncomfortable. What else can I say about it? I'm making shit up now.
Well, you see, sorry, I was saying, well, you see, with all of them, this is something that, there are many things I did on this movie that I wouldn't be appropriate for movies I've made in the past, but there is a performative element going to what you were saying, because it's both real and unreal at the same time, or real and, as Jodie said, more real at the same time. And so everybody, I think everybody on this stage, except David Heyman, was in a wig, and because it.
And you wore one, which was weird,
yeah.
but you really didn't have to.
Still have it on. But why the red nose? Yeah. But I got to see them all transform. Anne Roth, who's legendary, she would hate me for saying that word, but costume designer who I've worked with before, who did the costumes for this movie, and me and Neil, who did the wigs, some of the wigs along with Alexis. I got to watch all of them sort of transform and kind of elevate. It's almost like you watch them come in and then almost like rise up a little above the ground into the reality that we were all going to be in. And, and something Adam and I talked a lot about too, about gaining the weight and putting on, and Greta's amazing wig, because, as DeLillo says in the book, she has important hair, as Murray says. And I think it gave everybody something to play, in addition to everything else, that kind of transformed it a little bit, and it gave it, like I said, a kind of performative element that I thought was really right for this movie, which in other movies I've made, I go the other way. It's about getting as stripped down as possible to the person who even behind the actor, and this one, which was I found great pleasure, was in some ways to embrace performance.
Yeah, I would say it feels like it's often trope when actors say, and then I put on the things and I looked in the mirror and I was like, but to echo your point, it absolutely felt like when everyone was dressed and their hair, and it really felt like it filled up the world that needed the heightened, nature of everything. It needed that. To be naturalistic wouldn't have felt correct in some ways. It needed to have that extra. And the professors are very performative. Their whole thing is that way, and the family everything's extra, and I think it made that help.
And the sets were that way as well.
Yeah,
the colors, we put product in every scene. I mean, normally I'd say get the cereal box out of there, and then on this one we were like, I can't see the cereal box or the Coke or the Pepsi or whatever it was. It was about that stuff being just always available to us. It's always there. We don't even think about it anymore.
On this one, we have to close. We ran out of time. I want to thank our guest here.
Thank you, Julie,
for bringing the film and for being here at the table.